Hi, so yes, we're Andrea and Thibault. We're the founder of the studio that we call AATB. And to understand how we sort of stumbled into this field of robotics, we have to go back to our past. We were graphic designers. We were not kind of handling all this robotics business. What we were interested in was to build our own tools. So we started to build printers, like as graphic design tools, experiments with Arduino, electronics, programming. That's how we kind of learned all this craft. And the printers became a bit more refined, a bit like CNC machines. And at the end, we started to be very much interested in the link between data and then through machines becoming objects. So we started to build printers that were connected to the internet. Like that was, for example, a website where anybody around the world could leave messages. And then the printer would print out all this dialogue and conversation that would start to appear in an exhibition space. So we were really interested in that and all these sort of printing devices. And we were really at this time working on these sort of speculative products. So there was like sort of users that were using these virtual products. Like this was, for example, a detonator that you could connect to thermal printers. And by detonating, it would print the US Constitution. So you could kind of plug it in any sort of shop and print the US Constitution. So maybe that's quite useful today. But you could also imagine like a chair, but the chair has a DRM system, so you can only sit on it 8 times. After that, it will melt out and destroy itself. So we started to experiment with this idea of products that do weird things, and then our graphic design practice became a bit more like art. And then we started to realize that building new machines every time, building new products, a physical product is really difficult. So why not just like use a robot and then program the robot every time? So the robot is a sort of speculative product that can become specific products every time we do. So we thought, okay, we need a robot. That was not our robot, unfortunately. So we went on Ricardo and we bought a robot that we had never used. And that was the start of AATB, that we titled A Practice for Non-Industrial Robotics. Because 7 years ago, not really many people in art and design were using robots, and AI was pretty much not heard at all, as it is today. So we wanted to exclude the traditional robotics, like industrial robotics, and check what else could be done, so non-industrial robotics. Fast forward to today, we have like way more robots that we need. We have quadruped robot dogs, like big arms, small arms, and way too heavy robots.
Yeah, so actually 2 weeks after having bought the first robot, we already gave our first workshop at the design university we're studying in, and we were cutting styrofoam. So we were again like building a safe environment for the students to use these robots, and again through the machine, the robot turned this digital information into a physical artifact. One aspect we are extremely interested in is with robots, you can move things very precisely. And this was one of our first projects we have shown at the Design Biennale in Milan. It's a robotic sundial. So it mimics the movement of the sun outside, and it actually reconnects you to the universe. Another project we have been showing at VNA Dundee is called Soap Opera. It's a robot that blows bubble all day long. But what does it actually mean when we replace a robot? That is, what do we mean when we replace this game of like children playing soap bubbles? But then what does it mean when we replace it by a robot? Or another installation that we did was this skipping rope. It's called Big Players. So again, we replace the human acts by 2 robots, and they're allowing single persons to play skipping rope. Or we also try to maximize our luck by replacing the act of wishing by throwing a coin into a fountain. But what does it mean when we replace this 1,000 times? So we can roll just literally a robot in front of a fountain, and then the robot does its job. We've also done this installation again in Milan. It's a robot that is having a water pistol at its end and is actually following the persons that are outside on the street and are kind of, if you're lucky enough, you don't get hit, but the robot kind of randomly shoots at people. Or this installation that we have shown recently, it's called Void Avoid. So it's two big eyes that are observing people and following them. And then they are kind of, whilst observing you, also kind of trying to avoid you by just like looking up into the sky.
And so over the time, we really started to experiment with robotics as a sort of creative field. Initially, we did a lot of research on using robots for production. So we developed a lot of sort of short-run products where everything has to work for a very short time. The expectations are sky high when you put a robot in a museum. You have a whole crowd of journalists, like you have 10 minutes where it has to work perfectly. And then for 6 months, nobody really cares if it's like working 99.9% of the time. But we started to think that maybe arms, robot arms were one thing, but like mobile robots were also much more interesting. So we started to dive into the field of like mobile robots and essentially robots that you never really know where they are. And so we designed an installation where a whole room in an old abandoned coal mine in Germany was filled with these robotic dogs. And visitors were sort of intruding on the territory of these dogs. So they were fully autonomous, as if this was their own territory. And you would move in and essentially disturb their presence. So it also started to, for us, like dive into these aspects of like we have very high requirements for everything to work, but at the end it's absolutely not really commercial products, more like experiences, it's for the visitors. And so during COVID, for example, we had an exhibition in New York, and the exhibition was cancelled because of COVID. So the curator asked us, hey, can you do something remotely where everybody around the world can play and still like interact with your installation? So we thought, okay, we are stuck in our studio. We have these robots that are just laying there, so why not connect them to the website with a live stream? And anybody around the world can take control of the hands, and then people can touch their hands together via the robots, via the website. And so we programmed this entire platform, super low latency, and then anybody around the world with their mouse or their phone could play and interact with a very short delay. And it was really interesting because it also brought this idea of robots as a way to exist somewhere else via a machine. So that's something we were quite fascinated with. And exactly at this time, our studio was growing. We started to have a more like international exhibition and exposure. At the end of this exhibition, we had to take down the hands. And a friend called us and said, okay, you're gonna get a call. He was a director, film director. And he said, okay, we might use your robot to film something. Just say yes to the call you're gonna get. So we got the call. It was for a huge ad for On and Roger Federer. We had never worked in film. So we said, yeah, of course we will do it, don't worry. And then we scrambled to take the hands off. And then for a week, we brought some director friends and we did a sort of crash course week of learning to not look stupid on a film set. And we programmed tools and we programmed interfaces to learn to use our robots for film. So that was just like 1 week of going from 0 to 1 for using robots. And we founded, in the end, a new business that we called Superposition. And Superposition kind of by accident became the leader in Switzerland for camera robotic control. So we service most of the film jobs that you probably have seen on TV or campaigns around the entertainment and audiovisual landscape. And we do robotic camera control for the film industry. Usually it looks like this. You have a big robot and a big camera and very expensive people you don't want to hurt. And then it looks like this.
Roger?
And again, for that, we had to develop a whole software suite. We had to develop a lot of hardware to customize our robots for film application. And again, that became sort of internal products that were developed over time. And usually it looks like this. We have our big robot standing in the middle. We bring it to weird locations. For example, an ad for Gruyère in the cave cellars, or with like football stars, and the robot is filming basically in ways that you just cannot do. And that has brought us to this idea of developing these sort of internal products and spinning them off. So for example, right now we are more like going from a service company as Superposition to a product company and trying to release the hardware and the software we have developed because that's pretty much the unique aspect is that as we are not operator of the hardware, we also develop it in-house. We can kind of develop any sort of feature for any project when directors approach us. Like for example, if they say, hey, can we put the robot on the car and the car is driving around? We're like, yeah, sure, just let's do it, why not? Can we drift also? And yeah, sure, let's do it, why not? And so luckily we never broke any hardware or hurt anybody, but it's always very interesting the fact that we are able to control the hardware. We are able to go much farther in the projects we're able to tackle.
So we have started with all these kind of like music videos, rap videos, where there is obviously like a little budget, but there is a lot to learn. So we really kind of learned a lot during the past years. But then we also get called by big ad companies. So this was this summer. We shot an ad for Dacia, for example. So we use exactly the same technology, but then on bigger clients. Or also like, I think it was aired last summer, was an ad for Renault. So, and in this ad specifically, we were not holding the camera with the robots, but the robots were actors. So for this entire ad, we programmed all the movements for the robots and their parts. And we have noticed that, I mean, now as another company, like now, there is really a demand more and more to use robots in scenarios, in people or brands want to use robots as a tool to showcase a new technologies. So that's why we have developed another company now that we are just starting to build. It's called Kinematics, and we are really offering robot services for brands and for institutions, for individuals to program robots. So again, we have worked with On, for example, this time in a retail environment. So we got asked to install a robot in their like a flagship store in London and Regent Street, very prominent area, where this robot was basically during 3 years showcasing shoes and reenacting human movements, and just the robot was there as a product activation. We've also worked for Samsung, where for the new back then new Galaxy that had a special night mode, we were commissioned to do an installation where the robot would just move a strip of LEDs, so you could kind of like have an image that would magically appear when taking a photo with this new night mode. Or we have been working for Adidas on a project launched for 50 years anniversary of Samsung. We actually did an installation where people could live print onto garments. And for example, this was an installation we did last year at the opening weekend of the Venice Biennale of Art. We did an installation together with this artist Miles Greenberg, who did the durational performance. And we provided the service of all these 4 robots moving around him during 12 hours with public in a palazzo. And so we do a lot of things with robots.
Yeah, so we sort of kind of went from graphic designers to stumbling our way to developing these sort of different companies that in the end explore all the same things. It's all about robotics outside of industrial context and through different lenses. AATB is really for the art perspective, Superposition is for the film perspective, Kinematics is really for commercial collaborations, and all of these need different structures. We like to be very chaotic the way we work for our artistic practice, but clients don't like this at all, so we have to be very serious, have project managers and everything under control. And Superposition for film is also another way of working. So we sort of realized that in the end, what we're developing is discovering the new tools that are necessary to use robotics today and tomorrow. And so we are heavily using AI, agents, new programming paradigms, and all these things that are necessary for basically making these robots useful. Because without all these interfaces, these tools, this user experience, user interfaces, they kind of are useless. So that's where we are, and that's where we are going, these 3 sort of different lenses from robotics, and we hope you liked it. So thank you very much.